Good afternoon, students. We'll be starting with our today's lecture. So yesterday we had completed multiprocessor operating system type. So first one was each CPU has its own operating system. This was the first type. Second one is the master slave multiprocessor. So when we talk about the master slave multiprocessor, what does master slave multiprocessor means? First of all, master means who is running at the first, and slave is who are working under that person, that are called as the slaves. So this is the concept. As you can see, one master and then you have all the slave masters, then you have slave users, and then you have memory, and then you have input output. How it works accordingly, we'll see that. When we talk about this model, that is master slave multiprocessor model, in this model one CPU works as a master and others as slave. So CPU 1, which is at the first, will be the master, and other all remaining will be the slaves. One copy of the operating system and its table is with master and not with the slaves. So operating system copy will be in the hands of the master and not in the hands of the slave. All system calls are redirected to master for processing. So the CPU, which is going to look for all these all these functions and operations, is the master CPU. Master CPU may also run user processes if its time is left over. So if with handling all these conditions, that is operating system, functions, system calls, everything, after that, if that CPU gets time, that CPU can run the user processes as well. So that is the reason this model is called as a master slave model. Many problems of previous model, so many problems were there in this previous model, and because of that, master slave model was a resolved function or a resolved model of that previous version. There is a single data structure to record the ready processes. So there is one single algorithm data structure which is being used for collecting the data. When a slave CPU goes idle, if any of the slave CPU goes idle, that is, it is not working, it is set idle, it asks the operating system on master for a process to run and is assigned one. So the slave processes, if user processes, if are sitting idle, they do not have work, they will ask the master process that yes, is there any task to be completed, and by that the master process provides them the task or the work, and then their task is being completed. Thus this situation on CPU is idle while another is overloaded is prohibited. So sometimes it may happen that one CPU can be idle, some can be overloaded with processes. This situation can occur because in the same way dynamic allocation of pages can be done among all processes. So it totally depends on the master that dynamic pages can be provided for all the processes. It can be slave 1, slave 2, slave 4, anybody. Dynamically, that is regeneration of pages can be given to any one of them as they do their task in whole, that is the whole structure is been working over it. As there is only one buffer cache, so there is only one buffer cache, you can see one input output process only, inconsistencies never happen. So inconsistency will not be there as one single person is only working on it. It's just like a centralized solution. This whole process is like a centralized solution, means all the tasks are being completed in one single central level. Nobody else is trying to intrude, and so that the things become here and there. Master may become bottleneck. Bottleneck means through which it enters. That is the reason master is given the name bottleneck. Master slave model is this one. This is the model which is connected with one bus. That is the reason it's called a master slave process. So master slave multiprocessor can be asked in the exams also. It's a very important question, as well as this one, that is the first one. Each type has its own operating system, are the two important topics which are frequently used in the examination. Questions come in the exams, so please refer it. Next is symmetric multiprocessor, the third type. So symmetric means what? Same over everywhere. So symmetry means it's divided same so that the functioning becomes very easy. So asymmetry is above model is removed in this model. So there is a symmetric way in this way model because they do not have certain consistent functioning over, they have inconsistency, and that is the reason symmetric multiprocessor was a third type, which was an upgradation to master slave. See, every model will have some or the other flaw, that is a drawback, and to solve that a next model is being designed, that is a concept. Memory contains one copy of OS. Here memory will contain one copy of OS, but CPU can run it. But CPU can run that OS, any of the CPU. CPU is showing a system call, traps to the kernel and processes the system call. So CPU will issue a system call, and that system call will be trapped by the kernel, and that kernel will process that system call of that any of the CPU. Single set of operating system tables is present, hence model balances processes and memory dynamically. Single set of each set is being given to each and every CPU for working, that is for the processing, and that is the reason memory is also dynamically allocated to them. There is no master CPU bottleneck. So here there is no master CPU bottleneck. Each one has its own task. As master is not present, but it introduces its own problems. So if master is not there, there are some drawbacks because of it, but then still this is a solution. It is necessary to protect the operating system code from accessing by more than one CPU simultaneously. So they try somewhere to protect the operating system for two CPUs not accessing it simultaneously. This problem can be solved by making whole OS code as one critical region. So they have made one critical region for whole OS in the memory. A CPU must acquire mutex, that is lock. A CPU has acquired a lock to have access to OS code. So even if the multiple people try to access one single OS, there can be a problem. So what they have done, they have acquired a mutex, that is a lock to access the OS code. So there is a lock to access the OS code. If mutex is locked, then CPU waits. If it is locked, even if one CPU is working, another will wait. It will not try to access. This enforces mutual exclusion by allowing only one CPU to run the code of OS at one time. So this is a solution which has been given, that once it is locked, that one person is performing and it is locked, the other will wait, that is mutual exclusion will be done, that other will be in the waiting line, that is queue, so that nobody else can use it, one at a time can be the functioning. This approach is called as big kernel lock. So as it's in the memory, as it's in the kernel, because of which it is called as a big kernel lock, this approach which they are functioning. The disadvantage of such organization is that out of many single CPU will be running OS and other will wait, hence performance will be degraded. So sometimes it happens that if CPU is waiting and it is not giving the performance what is wanted, so that can somewhere degrade the performance of that model. Better solution to above problem is to keep independent parts of OS separate. So rather than giving it into the memory and locking it, we could give each and every CPU a different OS part so that it could run in parallel and there could not be a problem of mutual exclusion that anyone has to wait. So this is symmetric multiprocessor model. Next is multiprocessor synchronization. Why do we require synchronization? Synchronization is done for further processing or proper output. And how do we do that? We do that with a proper scaling. And how scaling is done, if you can see those numbers, that is CPU 1 and 2, you have two modules, CPU 1 and CPU 2, but you have these numbers 1, then you have these 2, then you have 3, and you have 4, and here you have words initially at 0. So how does it work, we'll go through that. So as multiple CPUs are present, as there are multiple CPUs accessing the system, they need to synchronize frequently. They need to process frequently to check whether any of the data is not missing. On uniprocessor system, when there is only one processor, if CPU issues system calls to access critical kernel, then by disabling interrupt before using table can work. So if one single processor is there, CPU can issue system call to critical kernel, and then disabling interrupt before using the table can work. So before prior precautions can be taken to work. Such disabling of interrupt will affect single CPU. So such things can only affect a single part of that system, but and other may proceed to use critical table. So another can go for the critical table rather than kernel. So hence in multiprocessor, so this can only happen in one single processor when there is uniprocessor. What when there are multiple processors, so each and everybody can affect because of the prior stages or actions taken. So mutex protocol is required to give guarantee of mutual exclusion in case of multiple CPUs. So that is locking the processes using mutual exclusion, that is making it into hold and wait state, can make these solutions more implemented using multiple CPU when they are using. This protocol needs a special instruction that permits a memory word to be examined and set in one individual visible operation, that is test and set lock. TSL, that is test and set lock instruction, can be set to implement in the critical regions so that each and every memory can be used by the CPU. This instruction takes 2 bus cycles to carry out the memory. So there are 2 bus cycles, if you can see, 1 2 1 2, that is CPU 2 reads O, CPU 2 writes 1, CPU 1 reads O, CPU 1 writes 1. So this is 2 operations which are being performed, 2 bus cycles which are being carried out to read and write the memory on a uniprocessor. TSL always works as expected. So this is test and set lock operation which works as expected. So we'll see, suppose memory has 1000 words. So suppose here memory has 1000 words being used as a lock. So they are used as a lock here. You can see this box. So is initially 0. So every lock will be initially 0. In step 1, that is this first CPU, what they will do, CPU 1 reads out the word and gets a 0. So CPU 1 priorly will read the memory and they get an output as 0 because the lock sets 0. In step 2, now this one, CPU 2 reads, in step 2, before CPU 1 has a chance to rewrite, so CPU 1 has a chance to rewrite the word to 1, CPU 2 gets in. So before it enters again, what it will do, CPU 2 will get in and CPU 2 gets in and also reads word out as 0. So both of them one after another enter. Then in step 3, CPU 1 writes a 1 into the word. So CPU 1 will again, after this exact after, because it's in the wait state, CPU 1 will enter and it will write 1. So in step 3, CPU 1 writes 1 into the word. In step 4, CPU 2 also writes a 1 in the word, so this one. Then both CPUs got 0 back from the TSL instruction. So 0 was being returned back to them as they got the first instruction. In multiprocessor, TSL fail both CPU. So TSL will fail both the CPUs if there are multiprocessors accessing the memory. If word lock succeeds will be a critical section. So if lock is succeeded properly, if they get the return values properly, then they succeed to make it as a critical section. Now what is critical section? Critical section is people trying to access the data one after the another. They cannot intrude the data in between. As a solution to above problem, first bus should be locked by TSL. So every time when there should be a solution, and for this solution to occur, every time when they run the bus, one bus should be locked while one is accessed, and so that other CPUs are denied to access it. As I said, the CPU one at a time can be a solution for it. So modern buses all have these services. So these type of services are there in the modern bus. It is not possible on earlier machine. It was not possible on the earlier machines. This mutual exclusion method uses a spin lock. So this method uses a solution as a spin lock. Next is, so this is spin lock exactly to avoid your problem of multiprocessing and critical section. So this is basically how it works. Spin holds the real lock, that is the first CPU. Then when CPU 1 is finished with the real lock, it releases it and also releases the private lock CPU 2 is spinning on. So CPU 2 will enter and just access the memory. So this is shared memory which has been used over all the four CPUs. Now CPU 4 will enter, CPU spin. See, can you see this arrows? That is the memory lock is spinning over a critical region to avoid cache thrashing. That is, cache memory should not be lost. For that, multiprocessor synchronization is being done. Next is time sharing. What is time sharing? Time sharing is dividing the processes in equal durations of time, so that none of them could be made a, like, there should not be made a differentiation between people or the CPUs or users. So consider first scheduling of independent threads. So there is an independent scheduling over threads, and for that what do we have? So as you can see, using single data structure for scheduling a multiprocessor, a scheduling algorithm for handling unrelated threads have single system wide area data structure for ready threads. So there is thread multiplication and arrangements are made in such a way that arrangement of data can be made. In the first one, as you can see, 0 has LMN, so 3, 11, again 11 is where the CPU is working, so other all are set into the priority on the levels how they will access the data. Then CPU 4 goes idle. So if this goes idle, what will happen? They have explained it properly. Now here, suppose 16 CPUs are present. So they have given an example, not from this one. I will give you another example. Suppose 16 CPUs are present and all are currently busy. So 14 different priority threads are waiting in their respective queue to run. So 2 CPUs will be running and other all will be in the priority run to work. The CPU 6 first finishes its current work, which then locks the scheduling queue and selects the highest priority thread A. So if any of them lock, then the highest priority thread will get its position. CPU 10 goes idle and chooses thread B. So this is between the thread and the priority for sharing the time sharing system. So this is as number of CPUs grow. So if CPUs are growing, more contention for scheduling data structure. So there will be a more contention of data for the data structure to be followed. The common overhead in performing a context switch when a thread blocks for IO. So there could be a common context switch because thread blocks the input output because it cannot set the priority. Next is space sharing. Again, space sharing is also a partitioning of data values over 32 CPUs which is being given. How 32? It starts from 0, not from 1. That is the reason it's 32 split over 4 partitions. How they have set into 4 partitions? As you can see, they have set 0 to 11 in 8 CPU, then 16 to 26 in 1, then you have 4 to 30 in 1, and they have 7 to 7, 15, 23, 31 in 4. So they have divided 4, 6, 8 and 12, and there are some unassigned also because they do not have the availability of processing. So scheduling multiple related threads at the same time. So if you say multi-threaded system is applied, this CPUs, multiple CPUs is called space sharing. So when you apply multiple threads for a CPU, they are called as space sharing. Related threads belong to same process. So related threads of that processing will be to the same process, often communicate with each other. So they can communicate with each other. The simplest space sharing algorithm takes the approach like this. So this is dividing it into partitions is the simplest method for functioning into the multiprocessor system. And that after creation of complete group related threads, once all the threads related to each other are tied up together, the scheduler confirms if there is many free CPUs. The scheduler will also check whether there are free CPUs available. If so, each thread is assigned to its dedicated CPU. If there are to the dedicated CPU through which it is processing, they will be allocated to them. None of the threads will be started till enough CPU become available. None of the threads will start on its own till the CPUs are available throughout. That is, together they start. Then thread does not leave its CPU. Any of the thread will not leave its CPU. CPU is put back into the pool of available. So wherever CPU is available, the thread will be put onto it. So as this diagram shows your CPU sharing. So CPUs are partitioned in some number of partitions, each one running the threads of one process. So each and every one will be running a thread of one process. Shows the partition sizes of 4, 6, 8 and 12 CPUs with 2 CPUs idle. Also threads finishes, new thread are created. Even if these threads finish, new threads will be created. The size and number of the partition will be changing. So every time these sizes will be kept on changing. It will not be the same. With this, we'll stop here for the lecture. We'll continue next part in the next lecture. Thank you.